Brilliant. Well, hey, welcome everybody. A smaller group today, but that's fine. That's good. We can be intimate. We can get to the point. We can have some fun and enjoy this coffee break, this midweek break from everything else that's going on around us. We've got Storm Christopher hitting us right now. My internet was out this morning. Came back thankfully just in time for this. But we've got a storm, but we've also got a Gaelle joining us. Excuse the pun. Gaelle, how are you? She'll come in like a whirlwind.
Exactly. I'm very good, thank you. I'm really, really happy to be here, and thank you for welcoming me. Definitely.
Brilliant. So Gaelle has got a really interesting. Had a really interesting life and is doing some really interesting stuff today around coaching and relationship coaching. But before we get into that, let's talk about some other aspects of her life. Gaelle was a world championship amateur. I'm not sure what the amateur means, Gaelle. Amateur triathlete, and also had a 10 or 15 year career in the city before moving into what she's doing now. So I think it'd be just interesting to have a little chat to start with, Gaelle, and let's talk about sports. How did you get into doing triathlons in the first place? What's the motivation?
I fell into it, I think, when I was really young. I was probably 17, so I came from a swimming background. And then I had quite a few friends doing this at high level in France. And then so literally tried one and then got totally hooked up, and that was over. And that was 28 years ago. So it's a bit of an addictive sport, I must say. Okay. But it's really good because you got 3 sports at once, where some say 4, even 5 sometimes, because you've got to do, transition is a sport in itself, actually. And also, you got to do a lot of strengthening work to make sure you don't get injured, which I've had quite a few times over the years. But it's fascinating because you can always bounce from one sport to another. So let's say even if you're injured, you can do another one. So it brings the variety that you may not have in other sports, and excitement, and you're training with friends. So it's quite social as well, whether you're training, right now it's more like on Zwift. So it's more virtual sort of training with friends. But you can do it with friends, or you can do it non-socially. It's up to people really to see how it fits. But it's really nice, and it's a lifestyle in a way.
As an ex-swimmer myself, and still do a lot of swimming with my water polo, a lot of swimmers find it difficult to get out of the swimming pool and do the cycling and the running. What was the biggest challenge between the 3 sports for you?
Well, initially it's like everything, you just die, right?
Okay.
It's like, let's face it, it's like a baby. You can't learn to, like when you learn to walk, you try a few times, you fall down, and you try again, you fall down, you try again, you fall down. So it's muscle memory. So yeah, when you first start, like everyone, you're going to be pants, let's face it. But then you do it more and you're like, well, actually I'll do better next time, and I'll do better. So you do it against yourself. And yeah, it requires training, but then muscle has memory. So over time you build up, and you become, much better. And obviously you got to keep at it, because if you stop, like me, swimming, you stop, you just straight away go back. It's probably less so with the bike or the run, because you can keep the momentum for going for a bit longer. But for swimming, as soon as you stop, like literally you just go back at the first lane instead of the 6th lane,
doesn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, you just build up, and I found as well, and I never realized that until later, that riding outside is so nice, because you're in the countryside or you're in the outdoors, and it's just nice to be out in nature and feeling the wind and so on. So it's kind of therapeutic in a way as well.
I found that, I must admit, I found that when I used to swim a lot. I was a good swimmer, and as a kid, teenager, spent hours in the swimming pool just going up and down. And I think, swimming is one of the horriblest sports to train for. And then I got to the point, I said, okay, you know, I'm going to give up swimming, and I took up water polo, and was amazed that you could get in a swimming pool and you didn't have to swim in a straight line. It's a bit like now you get on a bike and if you're doing it indoor cycling to keep fit during the winter, it's horrible. But then, you know, that getting out in the sunshine on a nice summer's day and going for a long bike ride is just beautiful.
And it's the same with open water. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yes.
Open water just give you that freedom as well. And yeah, some people might get scared, oh, I can't see the bottom or whatever, but it just gives you that freedom of, you know, in a pool, it's not a box. It's not like, you know, just floating, you're free floating. It's therapeutic again.
But hey, let's not hide the achievements under a bushel. You got good, didn't you?
I did. And I don't think I was naturally gifted like anyone. Yes, I came from a swim background, and I was probably better than your average because I started late. I didn't start when I was 5. I started when I was 13. So let's say it gave me an age to be probably in top third out the water, or, you know, sort of closer to the front and the middle. And then, yeah, it's like anything you want in life. Didn't happen overnight. I didn't even know I could have actually achieved that by taking coaches on. First one wasn't exactly right for me. I was really focusing on the bike because I could see how friends of mine were like doing better with the coach. So I saw how structured training could really help you to move to the next level. Just, you know, just going like that by yourself without knowing what you do, not always giving you the best sort of improvement that you can do quite quickly. But with structured coaching, and I'm quite a good horse, if I may say, you give me the training or you give me the coaching, and as long as it's on paper, I'll go and get it done, unless I'm injured or something. You know, I will follow those things like that. So I'm quite an easy athlete to coach for a coach in a way. Obviously, managing injuries and things, and sort of. So I was really fine-tuned at some point. And when I became world champion, I was actually I was working 14 hours on the trading floor each day. So it wasn't the easiest, I must say. But I was so focused, and I ended up having to man the desk by myself as well, because the 2 people I was working with decided to leave. And I was like, what are you doing to me? I've got world championships to, you know, and I'm on for a mission to get a podium here. So what are you doing to me? And suddenly just go by myself, having to deal that. And we had like, I still remember, we had like billions and billions of deal going through, and I had to man that, and the normal day-to-day, and all the client base, and training.
And training, brilliant.
So I would squeeze in, let's say I'd run to the pool with my phone in my BlackBerry in a plastic bag, just thinking, well, if the deal allocation's coming out, then that's it. I've squeezed in whatever I could on the day, and I'd just run back to the office and then just do the allocation. And then in the evening, I'd come home and I just had like, let's say 1 hour on the bike to do, and then I'd run off the bike and whatever time it was. And sometimes I wouldn't get home until 9, so I wouldn't go to bed until 11, and then next day up at 5 again. And a bit crazy, I must say. But when you're on the mission and you really want something, you make it happen.
Brilliant. So congratulations on that. And I know you're still active and sporty. But let's go back. Let's go back to your you mentioned your career there. So in March 2000, you found yourself at Dresdner Kleinwort as a junior Japanese equity sales person.
Yes.
How did that start? How did you get there? What was life like in those days?
Yeah, so bit of a Cindy's Rella story in a way of how I ended up being on the trading floor in the first place. I wasn't even aiming for that. I just happened to be a people person. So I got a really good contact with those people, and it looked like they were looking for my kind of profile in terms of like engaging people and having the client touch and all that kind of stuff. And I was speaking 3 languages, which they needed to plug in with their client base with those things. So they needed to plug in the French, they needed to plug the Spanish, and they also needed to plug the Scottish. And I was literally moving from Scotland down to London for that job. So I was talking Scottish fluently, which sounded weird at the time, but you know. not actually everyone on the desk, I'm talking English people, actually could engage with the Scottish. They just didn't understand what they were saying. So I love the Scottish personally. So yeah, it all happened like this, that I was sort of fitting, and it just happened that I ended up being on the Japanese equities desk. I had been a bit of a sort of experience with Japan before, when I was a student back in France, where I had dealt for 6 months with sort of exporting goods to Japan, and sort of working for a luxury company. So I had been exposed to that market already and some of the culture a little bit. So I don't know if that ended up being favored to this or just totally random. Anyway, it was beautiful, and I had a great life for a year and a half until they closed down everything.
Okay. And then on to Mizuho, Lehman Brothers. That must have been an interesting time at Lehman's.
Yes. So what this experience taught me very quickly was like, right, you're a year and a half into a job in the first place. You know nothing. You don't have any assets because you don't really have a strong client base after a year and a half. And so I was left like that outdoors, if I may say, go and find a job. And the whole market was like not great because it was after the tech bubble burst. Yeah. So it was quite an interesting time, but it's been good because it helped me to build resilience and see how you can rebound and just taking into your own hand. And I was like, just literally contacted every single head of desk on the street doing Japanese equities, say, right, can we have a chat? Can we have a coffee? Tell me what's going on your desk and let's see what's out there. And, maybe we find a match. And that's how I found my job then in a Japanese bank.
Yeah.
And again, later on, the Japanese market crashing, just going the lowest you can think of. Every day you'd go to work, you wouldn't know whether you'd have a seat or not, because Mizuho was the biggest bank by assets, but also by liabilities to the stock market and to the Japanese market. So when I literally left Mizuho, I was probably out for a little while when I focused on my triathlon.
Okay.
And I started doing sort of racing for GB and doing all the world championships and so on. Yeah, I forgot to say that I actually got the medal for GB.
Good. I'm delighted to hear that. Not Scotland.
Exactly. That's when I made slight change to my career, and coming from, thank you so much, Astrid. That's where I made sort of a bit of a shift from doing sales to sales trading. And I think that's really where I found my niche, because I just had this thing about being in contact with people. And for me, it was just like literally the perfect job. Although I'm not a big drinker and you needed to do a bit of drinking there, I was finding ways to avoid the massive drinking, because when you got guys who are like double, triple your size, 1 glass versus 3 glasses, it can lead you to really the wrong place. But yes, and then basically that was my long strike after that. So all in all, together, I did 20 years in the city and in investment banking. But I started shifting about 16 years in, where I was like, I love the job, but the hours, I don't really want to do the hours anymore, especially with Asia, because it's it's very long. You start early, you finish late, you're still on call at night, so you never rest. And started looking internally what else I could do, where I could bring my assets and my knowledge and help the bank further, and went into what was operational risk management. And I thought, yeah, great idea. Except that I realized about 9 months in, a year in, that wasn't my cuppa at all. This was about system, processes, procedures, and all that kind of stuff, which is great. And I've got one of my best friends is still doing that, fabulous. But I'm a people person, so I was missing the contact. And although I went on really well with the whole business, they all knew me respected me from my previous sort of background and stuff like that. I just felt I was letting them down. So more of my time, I focused on actually mentoring and coaching people. So as soon as
that was initially with colleagues in the business.
With colleagues in the business, engineers as well, because I felt that I didn't have the support I would have wanted to have when I was younger in my sort of profession. And that would have really helped me, I think, with my career. I did it all with hard work and, really putting in the hours. And as a woman, especially on the trading floor, and for a long time I was the only woman, especially on sales and sales trading, by myself. And you really have to do that 3 times more than the guys are doing. Let's face it, I'm not going to lie. It's, you know, and although I was part of the boys because I was like the sporty one and, you know, training and stuff and whatever, and I got on really well with them, I realized years later that first, you know, it is true. You have to work harder. You still don't earn as much. That is the reality. And then by then it was just, yeah, just different. I mean, I wouldn't change anything for the world. But I was already coaching then for 10 years already, because you've got juniors coming on and then you're helping them and you want them to, you know, be looked after and that kind of stuff. So yes.
Good. So at this time as well, some of that coaching took got you insight into their personal lives and what was going on outside work, and there was stuff going on in your personal life and going on outside of work, and because of that you kind of got to, and maybe you want to talk about that, maybe you don't, and that's up to you, but it ended up with you doing a complete shift into a different type of coaching. So exactly. Take us through that part of your...
Yes. So initially I thought, when I decided to take my own practice, to focus on sort of a few coaches say to me, look, this is your background, you've done that for 20 years, just carry on with the business and a career coaching, because you're good at it and you're really making a difference to, you know, the people you've helped at different levels. You know, I was being a director, obviously I could have access to a lot of people, so it was like juniors and VP and director level as well, and so on. And which made sense. But every time I was working with those people, I realized that they were always over investing in their career because of potentially deeper issues, either personal to themselves or their relationship. And there was always a big imbalance. And I know, because I've been there myself. When I was working on the trading floor, I must say, between the trading floor work and the sports, there wasn't much space left for the relationship. There was one. Luckily enough, my partner at the time was also a triathlete, so it was very understandable. And he was doing Ironman. I was doing the short, fast stuff, because that's the only time I had to be doing this anyway. When you only have 10 hours to give a week max to training, that's what you do. You just cut the kernel and just do the short stuff. And so that's what I realized. And also in my personal life, I had my whole life collapsed back in 2000 and I would say 12. Yeah, 12. When my partner at the time basically had a big breakdown, like massive breakdown due to long-term depression, which was underlying but never actually open. And he had suffered depression when he was 16, and he had mentioned it briefly to me, but I wasn't familiar with the whole thing. I'd never been really exposed to depression. And so it blew up in a massive fashion. Literally, my whole world went upside down. I'd be on a trading floor half in tears most of the days, because I would go home at night and I didn't know whether I'd find him alive or dead. And that went on for 10 months, every day. Just even mentioning it to you, it's still quite, you know, I've healed a lot, but it's still something, because it's someone I care for still, and is a good friend of mine now. And so that was like an eye-opening first for me to start, you know, looking at the wider world, not in my little pink bubble I had been for like 37 years, basically. And as this progressed, and he did a grand job to put himself back on the rail, and I was there supporting him. And although I probably didn't handle the you know, things the best way, because you don't know, especially when it's mental illness, I was probably trying to push him way too hard to do things I just didn't understand. I am now just U-turn. I understand a lot better, and I've had to deal with it myself as well. Not for a long time, but for a little while I had to deal with depression as well. And he decided to walk away from that relationship despite getting better, because I wanted kids and they didn't want any, and he didn't want to pass on to, the reason why he didn't want to pass that on to kids. He said, my illness is evil and I don't want to pass it on to my kids, so I don't want kids. So I let you go. So that was 10 years later. We were engaged. I was preparing a wedding, so that came a bit of a shock to the system. And then And then I ended up being single again, enjoying life, planning loads of things I had stopped doing, which to me is a very important thing, because I was doing things that I like, but there was a lot of stuff I'd stopped doing because, well, time-wise and everything. And when you're in when you're in a relationship, there's stuff you put aside. Let's say it's a give and take, but there's a lot of stuff you put aside. So decided to just pursue a lot of things. And then I met someone, but I met someone way too quickly. Hadn't even grieved from the previous relationship. And for me, it was just fun. I thought, whatever, it's fun. Yeah, except that the fun just ended up being not fun. And it just ended up being, oh, this person's ticking all the right boxes. It's like, I can't overlook them. And so off I went back into another relationship. And unfortunately, because I didn't have the time to grieve, I ended up being into an unhealthy relationship. And I didn't realize because it was covert, and it took a while for me to really realize that. But as I went through this relationship, it totally destroyed me to the ground. Lost my self-esteem, lost my confidence, lost a lot more than that. I lost a lot of money. I lost many things. But I'm still, and my health as well, which is super important to me, as you may have guessed. I was going into panic attack. I lost a lot of weight. People on the trading floor were saying to me, what's going on with you? Well, I can't sleep. And, and going from like 51, 52 kilos of winter weight into like 48 kilos, it was like definitely not much left of you. It wasn't, it was horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on to anyone. So I had to go on to antidepressant to try to stabilize in a way. But after a year, I went, this is not me. I don't like antidepressant. It numbs me. And that's not right. I don't like being numb. I don't like medication generally. But so I went off it, and then off I went. Nice little roller coaster. Days I wasn't great. Days I was better. And that's how really my big self-development journey started off, because I was desperate to sort out this relationship. I knew there was stuff that wasn't right, but I wasn't too sure what. And I kept thinking it was me. And I was lost. I didn't know how to communicate, and there was so many other things. And then from there was another health event that happened. I ruptured my ACL, which is the tendon that you got at the back of your knee. As a triathlete, there's a bit of an issue. I did that skiing, and I literally had left my job on the trading floor to take a year out to dedicate this to triathlon, racing world championships and half Ironman. So it's like bit of a bummer when you've done that 11 days into the year. And so I had to rechange my whole, quickly pivot my whole plan, say, okay, get an operation done. You need your knee. You're still going to carry on doing triathlon. You still want to go skiing. Just get the knee done privately, and then focus on finding another job. So that was the plan. And things got worse and worse, because then we were at home 24/7. As a COVID, very, very similar situation. He couldn't stand me to be there. I was like literally stuck at home because I was 6 weeks on crutches, and I couldn't actually do much. And looking for a job and still supporting everyone, because he was a full-time student as well. I had kindly offered to help him with his commercial pilot training. So it was for 18 months. So basically, just took him home with me. So he moved in with me. I was paying for everything and supporting him. Anyway, and if you actually look at sort of from a metaphysical point of view, the meaning of the knee is relationship. So if you've got an issue, often it's linked to a relationship. And it's the only sort of articulation in your body that bends backwards to move you forward. But when you actually can't use a knee anymore and you can't walk anywhere, you're stuck in your track. And it's also about moving towards the future, moving towards, whatever. And so when your knees stop working, then you got a big issue. So that was quite interesting for me to really discover this, the sort of the meaning of it. And if you look at traditional Chinese medicine as well, and energy work, which is something I'm really interested in, the right side of your body is and the lower side, but then that's getting too complicated, is actually linked to the masculine energy. That's just your right side is linked to the feminine energy. And weirdly enough, what did I rupture? The right knee. So it was very much linked to the relationship. And I know obviously things were not working and so on, but I carried on pushing. And then by then find my new role. And every day I would turn up, and literally some people on my desk didn't really guess, but I was holding back the tears every day. Every day I was in tears literally, because of what was happening in the relationship and so on. And I was desperately looking for help everywhere, in personal development, in doing seminars after seminars, and literally then came to an end where it wasn't possible anymore. I decided to walk away, because I'm like, I'm not going to carry on like this. Like when I was going swimming, I thought I would have a heart attack. I had chest pain. So physically feeling chest pain. I wanted to rip my heart out of my rib cage. That's how painful things were. So although it was all mental and emotional, I felt physically the pain, and I wouldn't wish it to anyone again. And so decided to walk away. And weirdly enough, I just had a mammogram result coming back, and it came back abnormal. And that crushed me. I was like, are you joking? I spent all those years looking after my health. You know, for me, it's such an important thing. And then I've just literally thrown it away for someone who wasn't even deserving of anything, of my love, of my, of giving everything out. And I was meant to go to a seminar to Australia, literally 2 days after I got the result. And they said, yeah, we need to do a biopsy. I was like, well, I'm going away, so I can't do a biopsy. It's quite a big operation, and you need rest, and you can't travel, go like whatever feet in the air to do this. So had to wait for a month. But I had this weird, quiet confidence in me that because I had removed the environment, had walked away from the whole situation, and it was so toxic and so stressful. Like, as I said, I wouldn't sleep at night. I would cry every day. I don't know why I didn't want to walk away before that. It was like fears, limiting belief. He had a son that I loved very much as well, which I considered my adopted son, who's only 9 at the time. And I met him when he was 4. So there was, those bonds and stuff. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen next? And, I thought he was a good guy, and maybe I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. And I had all those things going in my head all the time, just stopping me from moving. And oh my God, when I moved, I felt released. For the first time in years, I slept well that night. It was just weird. I just felt peaceful, and I slept, not the first night, the second night actually. And I was like, oh my God, why did I not take the decision earlier? And there was loads of things going on in my head, the financial side, the other stuff. Is it going to move out? Is like whatever stuff, whatever is other excuses you give yourself to not jump off the cliff. And then I went into that seminar, and that seminar just changed my life. That's when I decided that's it. Start from scratch, do everything else. Just pack up the job, the corporate job, literally, which is crazy. And I came back, did the biopsy, and it came back clear. But usually what the whole situation I'm trying to tell you here was, your soul sometimes is trying to contact you, to message you, and it's about listening to our bodies, and we get messages from those things. And the more we ignore them, they start with like small messages, not too important. And then the next time it's a bit more important, that more serious, that you actually start thinking a bit more. Usually the third time that you got something happening, it's usually the one that is unforgivable. And then literally it's the big one. It's either a heart attack, a cancer, because you didn't listen, and you keep being given sign that, look, something is not right in your life. Do something about it. And you're not. And clearly this was the environment. It was him. And as soon as I walked away, everything just went. And it felt so clear. I was quitting a 6-figure job. Didn't care. I was like, yeah, I can deal with it. We'll see how it comes. And it was so clear in my head, I didn't need to turn back. I know what my mission is. I need to help people and do those things. And when I got told to do this business coaching, I didn't feel that 100% comfortable about it. And it took me actually quite a little while to come out to my whole network, especially on LinkedIn, because they were all investment banking, all guys, all stuff. And I was like, what are they going to say? They're probably going to say I'm a fraud. Like, who are you to just say you can suddenly become a relationship coach or helping people with those things? I've done so much training, so many seminars, got even myself like really expensive coaches who knew their stuff. They're really expert in their stuff. And, even from the biggest expert in the world and all that. And then I'm like, it took me a little while and I went, sod it. I'm telling them they like it, they don't like it. I don't really care anymore. This is me. And I'm not going to hide myself anymore because I know how much impact and how much I'm changing people's life. And I've helped men and women, but I've seen how they've blossomed and how they've became like totally someone different and regain their self-confidence and their self-esteem and totally just decided to go for their dream. Some of them quit their job or starting their companies during COVID last year and did really well. They've even shifted. I've got one of my clients, she's quite high up into a bank, and literally she was feeling blocked about things and she couldn't carry her job properly. And we just removed whatever blockade she had in there. And she keeps sending me messages going, oh my God, I've done this. Like for forever before, it would take me 3 days and I'd get panic and I get stressed and I didn't want to do that executive committee meeting. And I was like, now I'm like just turning up. I've prepared my stuff, but I'm totally fine because I am empowered and I don't have this anxiety anymore. And she said, there's so many things you helped me with to move forward. I had another client. She finally got a job in trading on a trading floor. That's what she wanted forever. For 15 years, she self-sabotaged herself. And she was kind of doing more operation job. I mean, at 40, I don't know anyone's gone from operation into front office. And adding to the mix, she's Black. So if, it's literally, we know how things are, right? And I know things have changed a lot last year with the subject and the topic, but there's still a lot of discrimination. And for me, it's, when she was telling me things, it would just get me so aggro sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, it's just annoying me that people are thinking that way. There is no color. When we look inside ourselves, we all the same. We all blood and flesh and bones and energy. But, it's literally, there shouldn't be things like that. And it does make me aggro all the time.
Gaelle, what an amazing story. What an amazing story. What an amazing 20 or so years you've had. Ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster ride.
And I wouldn't change anything for the world. I'm actually very grateful to him for the horrendous experience I had, because I wouldn't be who I am now and what I'm doing now. So I am so grateful to him for that. And I was very grateful to him very quickly after I walked away, because I realized what the gift he gave me.
Just let's sort of open up and have some questions, some dialogue with everybody out there, because I'm sure there's plenty of questions. I'm going to just sort of kick a question off for you. And I look back quite often at past generations, and go back to the turn of last century, so into the early 1900s, where there were distinct roles. Men were men, and they went out, and they were providers, and they had a very well-defined role in life and in a relationship. And likewise, the woman, the female partner, the wife, she had a distinct role as the homemaker and the mother. And against a backdrop of that, you also had this sort of stiff upper lip where you couldn't talk about emotions and you had to keep everything tucked up inside you. That to me seems potentially a lot easier way of life. Everybody knows their place. Not necessarily better, but easier. And you bring that forward to today, when we've all got choices in our relationships. We can define the type of relationship we want. Society doesn't necessarily judge us if we want to be stay-at-home fathers, for example, or go out to work career mothers. Plus, we're all encouraged to share our emotions. and our thoughts and get everything out on the plate. Does that just, does that bring complexity to relationships?
It does. And as human beings, we're all complex. So yeah, the big changes that happen in the last century about, bringing, because of the whole, literally, the industrialization of the society, and then obviously war kicking off, and then when the men were gone to war, obviously things still had to go on at home. So those women started taking on roles which were not theirs initially. And when the men came back, obviously they felt totally out of place. And then suddenly women find a new freedom, a new independence, and all those things. And then that got carried forward even more in the 60s, as we know, with revolution and so on. And it's like, yeah, I don't need men anymore, this and that. And a lot of us, well, my generation, maybe, like they're slightly, we've been kind of brought up saying you've got to be financially independent because you can only rely on yourself and no one else. So having these kind of generational patterns being kind of plugged into you, and obviously I wasn't brought up in the UK. I only came to the UK like in my late teens and early 20s. I know it was obviously even more stiff-lipped in terms of like emotion. We were probably a bit freer in France with emotion, but then again, depends on family. Mine, I was quite lucky. We could actually express ourselves. But it was those roles. And I'm also coming from a family background where things were very equal at home. Despite my dad coming from a farmer family in the first place. So where you had this patriarch, sort of really model and patterns, and where my grandma she had 9 kids and so you do everything, the work at the farm plus the kids plus whatever, and you just the object. And so I think a lot of things have changed, and by being brought up by having like, you've got to be financially independent, that's what we went out and we're like, yeah, I don't need guys, off we go, boom boom boom, I can do my own thing. Yeah. And literally so much so that it went to the extreme. And I think it's great to have financial independence, but we've mixed up all the roles there. And when we come back home, we actually don't know how to get back into so we all have masculine and feminine energy in ourselves, all of us, whether you're male, whether you're female, we all have that. And it's more developed, it's a natural thing, but also society has also helped in developing one over the other more. So when you are there, you are into your action mode. That's what masculine energy is. Action, take action, do things. Your feminine energy is more about being and flowing and just literally, it's like if you think about doing the sports or dancing, it's just the difference into just nurturing versus man is protector, or the masculine energy is more protector and all those kind of things. So we all have that in us. Obviously, I know for a long time I was virtually always in my masculine energy. So I'd come home and I'd still be the same person. Yeah, I do this, I do that. So then obviously my partner didn't find their way in. They had no role, as you've just said. They didn't know where to sit in. I stole their role. I was both everything. And I think this really important, I think, for relationship and it's obviously more blurred now because we're all working from home, so it's complicated. So you don't always have the space to think, I'm into work mode and now I'm into home mode. So it's almost, I always say to my clients, why don't you just go out for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or go into the bathroom or have a bath or just switch, make a transition and be back into who you would like to be if you're woman, as a woman, just as a loving person, being able to listen to people and engage again and communicate, rather than jumping from the laptop going and the library and answering the email, and then suddenly you're jumping in the kitchen doing the meal and then back with the kids doing the stuff, and you definitely not had first time for yourself. So you can't actually, even be in control of your own self because you're just spread too thin. And then at the same time, you've lost totally your role in there as a woman, as a loving mum, as a loving partner. And it's very easy to just totally forget about that. And the same for the male, they're just like there, and then, you know, it's either everything is taken away from them because everyone is managing that for them, so they don't actually have a role of protector, of providers, of all those things, which are also really important to them, because that's, you know, this is how we were born. You know, when you go back to the start of humanity, men were there to hunt, women were there to just go and pick the flowers and the veg and or whatever they were finding, right? And then making the cooking. And then, so I don't want to go back there because it's too, we've evolved so much. But those are quite important roles which have kind of gone blurred. And I think when we have more that understanding and having the communication about those roles, it's a lot easier to find yourself first, but also find a really understanding, supportive, loving, and caring relationship, which you can really have for the long term and in the long term and grow together.
Brilliant, Gaelle. Thank you. Right, I'm going to open up now to everybody. Does anyone want to ask a question? Raise your hand, smile. Jennifer waving at me. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi,
You've got a question.
Yeah, hi, Gaelle. I have a theory. Having been in incredibly stressful situations myself, whereby you get to a point that your adrenaline is triggered. Once you're at that point in your life and you learn to run on an incredibly high level of adrenaline, what do you do now with your adrenaline?
Okay, so that's a very good question. I didn't even realize for years and years on the trading floor, I was just functioning on adrenaline, right? And you need adrenaline, but you need it in small dose, because that is usually how it makes you make positive move, positive action and things like that. When you have it non-stop, then it becomes a detriment and it has an impact on your stress level and on your body and your immune system. So we have to almost like really recenter ourselves. So there are different ways that you can actually break up the cycle, but when you're in it, it's very hard. So most you need to remove yourself from the situation. And even if it's taking 3 minutes of removing yourself and going to the toilet to just recenter and ground yourself. And this technique you can do, you know, I'm sure you've heard that everywhere. You can do breathing exercise, you can do jiu-jitsu, which is like a technique that you can use with your hands, like it's almost like a mini meditation. You can do tapping, like there's a lot of people who know about EFT, which is emotional tapping, but there's also TFT, which is slightly different as well, and it makes you to reprogram everything so you can actually re-engage different part of your body, because you cross sort of the zone in your brain and you just engage in different ways. So you do some humming linked with some tapping linked with some eyes crossing, which is resetting your whole brain basically. Then you're like, because you're a bit confused initially about how much stuff you got to do, your brain just like, okay, I got to focus on what I got to do. So, well, the adrenaline is gone. Or if it's not as much adrenaline, then you might just need to go for a run or go a quick exercise. And what I found really incredible is dancing. It's just taking you out of your situation, and literally you do it until you feel like relaxed and you're in flow and you're really in a rhythm and everything is gone out your head. Because I found dancing absolutely massively powerful in terms of just being in the moment. And especially if it's a tune you like, and then you put another tune you like suddenly you're back in your body, you're back in the present instance, and it's just bringing you those nice, you know, the serotonin and those nice little chemicals that you need to balance out your adrenaline.
So do you because I do a lot of things like ultra running and stuff like that, and
awesome.
So I get where you would have that almost addiction to have that adrenaline carry on, etc. Do you still do your triathlons, or do you do you rein it in?
Yeah, so that last year has been a bit complicated, obviously. I think naturally I've reined it, but naturally because I'm quite busy with what I'm doing and I love what I'm doing and helping more people. But I'm still going out running, and I'm doing rehab at the moment because I got injured a year and a half ago. Well, weirdly enough, following my separation, and it was all linked. It was again the right calf, and it was all linked. And if you look again metaphysically, the calf is the link between the knee and the ankle, and it's also acceptance. So it's knees are, and it's about accepting the situation. But that's another conversation. And literally, it can be very tempting to, yes, go to your default mode of, okay, go for a 50K run, in your case, for ultra running. I wouldn't go for a 50K run, but, so it's about almost finding other ways than your default ways to do something else. I know some people might find it really weird, but just sometimes go naked, like barefoot into the grass. And I mean, for me, nature is very important. I don't do it enough, and that's why I'm changing a few things, because I don't have access to enough. Like I'm quite lucky, I'm quite green where am I, but not enough to my liking. So it's finding other alternative that you may have not looked at, to not go to always your default mode, because your default mode is going to be like, right, so I can go and swim for an hour and I've got to do that pace. I can go and run for an hour and 2 hours and I've got to do that pace, or my bike, and and then at the end I feel totally destroyed and I'm great. That's the only way I'm going to sleep. Yeah, that's the way I did it. But it's not always the best way. So I think use what works while it works, but look for other alternative, which might actually help you to start looking at it in a different way, and not just always the same way. But the brain is amazing. The brain just loves easy. So you rewired stuff in one way. Well, if you got, let's say, a situation and the brain think, oh, I know that situation, that's very similar to that other situation and that other situation, boom, they get you that connection that they've worked out ages ago, and they're not going to look for any other way of doing it, because it's simple. They know that it's wired before, and that's it. So yes. So literally, that's the way probably to find ways.
Thank you.
That did it help, or do you think that is going?
No, I think that, yeah, I think that's totally right. Looking for other opportunities to satiate that kind of chasing the adrenaline without it actually being an adrenaline buzz, if that makes sense. Trying to find that it's going to sound ridiculous, but that peaceful side, and understanding that actually you don't have to always be in this pressured environment. You can do something else. And I suppose it's just being very self-aware.
And I think it's very hard as well when you're addicted, because I know I was addicted to triathlon. Literally took me, when I stopped the first time, it took me 3 months to get off the addiction. I was like, oh, I've got half hour, maybe I can do a quick swim, or I can go for a quick run, it's like, and I think, like, you ask me to meditate, I'll go like, yeah, no chance, like, still not gonna happen. Things change, things evolve. Now I can actually meditate, but it took me a while. But I think maybe just walking rather than running might be just something, and walking in the forest, or walking in woods, or even walking barefoot, because when you walk barefoot, suddenly you can't walk as fast, because you're like, oh, my feet are not used to that. So yeah, so just things like that, and just be more present. And I know it's so hard when you got like 10 things going at once, but even if you've given yourself 2 minutes. And one of the trick I gave to my clients is like, what, when you finish the session, let's say on Zoom or a meeting or whatever, I don't know if it lasted 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, I said to them, right, you set yourself off, you stand up, you start breathing, going once, for 2 minutes, you start doing big breathing in, big breathe out. And as you say that, you say the word, as you're breathing out, you say the word release. Release. And it's almost becoming like a mantra. So you speak in, and then release. And I said, you walk out the room. So by walking out the room, it's again psychological. You almost break the energy of the room, and by just going under a door frame, it's just breaking the pattern. And then what you do is, for another 2 minutes, you think, okay, my next meeting is this, or my next, whatever hour is that. What do I want to get out from that hour? How can I engage people? What do I want to get out of that meeting? And literally set those intentions for the next hour. Do again some long breathing, and then go back in. And so you just connect with those people and you're like full on, fully refreshed, reconnected, know exactly what you want from your meeting or your next, Zoom call, and making sure that you hit it, basically.
I think that's great techniques. Thank you.
That's okay, Jennifer.
Brilliant. Sylvia, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi Gaelle, and thank you for sharing this with us. I think it's quite inspiring how you have experienced so many up and downs, I guess, in your life, and you are here in such a great position. So that's very inspirational. So thank you. What I wanted to ask you is, so when I listen to your story, I have the impression, and this is maybe I'm putting my own words, so I'm sorry if it's not that what you meant to explain, but I got the impression sometimes you got involved in situations because whatever, because of the energy levels. I'm also someone that I believe in energy, and from time to time I practice Reiki, for example, with someone that yes, it's good, it's very good, believe me. People think it's a little bit cuckoo, but it helps you balance your body and to at least it helps me to balance myself. So I want to understand, sometimes I have the impression that maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were stuck, and how I want to understand your thinking process, and how do you notice that, because you were involved in situations and maybe you didn't even think you were stuck, but probably somehow you became aware of that. And how did you, if you could, maybe you have explained that, but I just want to make sense of that. How did you become unstuck, or how did you come back and say, look, this is what I need to do? I remember one thing that stayed in my head is when you said, when you started to sleep and you said, wow, I feel so great now and I can sleep so well. And for me, that was the coming out from somewhere where you were, and you could see your way out. Am I right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, look, if you're on the call today, it's because you needed to be on that call. Okay. It's like, there's no coincidence here. Whoever is on the call today was meant to be on this call today and hear whatever I've got to say and be the participant of that conversation today. So that's why I'm so thankful to all of you, really. So I have evolved a lot since then. So I've got techniques now to really get unstuck, like in no time. Whatever situation, whether it's an emotional situation, whether it's a work-related thing where I'm like, oh, how am I going to do that? I'm not too sure. Now I've got and do this. At the time when I was really stuck, it was all I was literally living on fear, but I didn't realize that they were limiting belief, and they were just fear, which, you make up stuff in your head, how you're going to do this, how you're going to do that. If I haven't got a guy in my life, how am I going to sort out the car? How am I going to sort out the DIY? Just stupid stuff that comes to your head. So I think to become unstuck, the reality is it's about your pain threshold. And when your pain threshold is so unbelievably high that you can't take it anymore, that's when you take action. And I know very few people who've taken action without having the pain. And for me, the pain was just, threshold pain was so high. And I'll tell you what triggered the day where I decided to walk away. I came back from a bike ride, as you would, and looked myself in the mirror, and I saw my grandma, who had passed away 2 years ago. Before that, prior to that, literally the way I looked, I was aged. I looked horrendous, and I went, oh my God. This was my trigger point to decide, that's it, I can't carry on. I'm not going to put my health in danger for someone else. This is not worth it. It's not what, And I think the biggest change or momentum of change is your pain. And once you reach the pain point, that's when everything just goes, because you can't cope with it. So we all have different level of pain. I mean, some people would have said, what on earth did you do this for like 3 or 4 years and you were crying every day? And I mean, what, are you insane? I had friends of mine, they didn't even dare telling me anymore. My parents didn't either. They could see I was in pain, but it comes to your own decision. No one can press that trigger. It's only when you feel ready.
Okay, thank you.
That was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
I don't wish anyone to go to the pain.
I guess.
Please, if you've got a bit of doubt, actually look for someone who can help you to get clarity, to avoid that pain threshold in a way. I mean, we all need to learn from our own experiences, and I'm a big believer of experiences they are necessary. That's why we're on this planet for, to have experiences. But yeah, don't push it as far as I did. And being a triathlete, I probably pushed the pain threshold really far. So, and I'm sure Jennifer would agree with me as well. Being an ultra runner, that is even more mental. It's a bit like it's like Iron Man. So yeah, don't push that pain threshold where you don't need to push it.
Gaelle, our hour unfortunately is nearly up. It's nearly up. So I'm sure we need to perhaps bring this to a close, but you've been brilliant, inspiring. Your story is great. If anybody out there wants to get in touch with Gaelle, her details are all on the website, on the event and the blog, and I'm sure she'd be delighted to talk to you and reach out to you on an individual basis. But Gaelle, for now, thank you so much, and maybe we can invite you back in a few months' time and just have a catch up. Come back to the sofa. Come back to the sofa with us.
That's all right. I'd love to. I mean, I'm very, very grateful for all of you being here today and for the question. And I'm sorry if I've talked too much and you still have plenty of questions. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you with those questions. As part of this call today, just as because we didn't get a chance to maybe engage. So just as a free thing. No problem at all. If you want to know further, if you have stuff like you really need clarity, you're stuck, maybe your confidence is an issue, maybe your self-esteem is an issue, or your relationship is an issue. And sometimes we don't realize most often it's our own relationship and potentially generational patterns that we've inherited that we don't even know of, that is totally screwing us up the whole way. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook as well, my personal and my professional, my business one, and just on through W.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. Big claps. Big claps. Before everybody goes, just a little advert for next week. We have another interesting guest next week. The retired Chief Constable of Sussex, Martin Richards. So an interesting topic there to talk about diversity in policing and diversity in the police force. Martin's a fantastic character, a great speaker, and I'm sure, bearing in mind the topic and his background, lots of questions there, because I think policing has changed a lot over recent years and maybe has still got some miles to go to be truly inclusive, truly representative of the community, and to handle some challenges in dealing with domestic violence, with rape, with other things that are dear to our hearts here on this call. And I'm sure Martin would be delighted to take your questions and get your thoughts on some of those. So come and join us next week. It just leaves me to say once more, thank you very much, Gaelle. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for your questions. I'm hanging around as usual after the call, so if anybody wants to chat or just to say hello, then stay on. Otherwise, see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies, you are awesome.
I